Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Leaders in Supply Chain podcast. I am your host, Radu Palamariu, Global Supply Chain Practice Head for Morgan Phillips Executive Search. Today, I'm excited to have with us Brad Hollister, CEO of SwanLeap. SwanLeap is the number one company on the 2018 Inc. 5000 fastest growing private companies in the US. Its revenue has jumped from $10,000 in 2013 to $100 million in 2017. And this year, they're likely to break the 500 million mark. This pretty much makes them among the fastest growing startups actually worldwide. Through their rapidly deployed custom implementation of next generation transport management system and auditing services, SwanLeap is using artificial intelligence and machine learning to automate many of the manual roles in the company's supply chain. This way, they are providing supply chain managers, decision makers, and entire companies with comprehensive, actionable insights into supply chain logistics and costs, and obviously they're generating significant savings. Headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin, SwanLeap brings unprecedented clarity and control to a fragmented shipping market through a proprietary machine learning platform that curates cost-effective and personalized supply chain recommendations in real time across all transportation modes to improve connections between sender, receiver, and carrier. A few words now about Brad. So he's the Chief Executive Officer of SwanLeap, and under his leadership, obviously, the company has delivered an unprecedented 75,660% growth in revenue, which is just mind-boggling in the last 3 years. He's a lifelong entrepreneur, passionate about technology and the industry, and then he's also obviously a visionary around next generation technology. With extensive experience in transportation, logistics, and supply chain, his leadership and institutional expertise have solidified SwanLeap's position as the leading provider of end-to-end transportation technology. He is a guest lecturer for the Wisconsin School of Business at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, as well as a sought-after speaker on the advancement and disruption of the transportation industry. Moreover, he is a proud alumnus of the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Brad, pleasure to have you with us today, and thank you for joining.
Thank you, Radu.
Super. So let's just take a moment before we start talking about SwanLeap, which obviously a lot of our audience and most of the people listening to us are extremely excited. Let's talk a little bit about the startup you had before that, because I was reading that you had sunk about $200K of your own money into the company, had landed a huge client, basically were close to signing a $2 million venture capital fund, and then a capital round. And then basically you kind of shifted gears and you decided to go for SwanLeap. But, what was the story around that?
Well, I had been working for a very small 3PL that was pretty late to the game in the online brokerage business. That was kind of in 2010 era when people were starting to have some success in the freight brokerage business online. And I saw a way to completely automate that entire job by basically connecting shippers and carriers and brokers all together in a marketplace. And that was a pretty nice technology. It worked really, really well. And what we realized is that there's a major disconnect from what is actually happening to what people perceive the solution to be. So we made a really nice solution that no one really wanted, connecting shippers up with empty trucks. What I learned through that process is that there are no such thing as empty trucks. Trucks don't drive empty. They find loads on the way back, for the most part. And they basically wholesale themselves through channels such as 3PLs or other load boards to find loads if a driver is truly in a dead lane, a dead haul lane. And what we also found is that shippers don't necessarily want extra work in going to an extra website or typing in things manually to just wait for a $200 or $300 savings in a truck by maybe finding something on the market. So we were solving a need that we found out we were solving a need that really no one had, and it worked well. The large client was using it, and it was working well. They were saving a few $100s by basically automating the role of the 3PL. But what we found was that a certain slice of the market is interested in that. And it's not the large companies that have negotiated multi-year contracts with carriers, that have load planning departments, that have made commitments on their volume to carriers and actually don't want a lot of new foreign carriers or unknown carriers into their dock. So that was what we had been really surprised to learn, was just how powerful and ingrained supply chain from a plan, from a negotiated, committed contract perspective, loaded into a table, and the table just basically dictating the output. That's really how supply chain business works. Despite the fact there's since Freight Access, since we rolled it up and we actually were able to sell some of the source code to another technology company that's using it now to do something slightly different. Um, a lot of people have been onto this. It seems to be what all the new quote unquote disruptors are focused on. And I just know that's not how the market works. Of course, they're going to find a few companies interested in doing pilots, but it's not going to be sustainable because there's potentially hundreds of thousands of supply chain planners out there that have already committed a plan and a budget and a volume and everything else to their carrier network. And it isn't. We have found the opposite, that a freight marketplace is what the market wants.
Yes, yes. And from there, how did SwanLeap came about? How did you kind of pivot, or maybe not pivot, but actually change altogether and lead into SwanLeap?
Well, kind of backing up, just before SwanLeap, we had actually gained interest from a number of the original Echo investors in Chicago after Echo went public and these guys got flush with a bunch of cash. They were looking at the next big thing, and so they were eager to throw money at this new idea of freight access being the next frontier. But at the same time, we were hearing that the idea wasn't working on the street, but yet the investors wanted to invest in it. And at this point, I can't pay for my groceries and my family, so what do? Pretty difficult dilemma I'm in, to take money that I know is going to be a mistake, or not take the money and go on broke. So that's exactly what I did. And so, we were trying to find the path forward in what the market wanted, trying to make a living. And so we found a customer with a simple problem. He needed ability to dynamically decide, using the first version of our AI to determine how to make a parcel shipment. And he was willing to pay us about $6,000 or $7,000, which seemed like a lot of money back then. And to make this technology, we actually asked for 12, and he said, "No, I'm going to pay you 6 or 7." I don't remember what it was. And we said, "Okay, we'll take it."
Yeah, when you have nothing, it's good.
Yeah. So we made a technology that's still in use today, the first version, and that is the order comes into our system, and then we will actually shop against FedEx, UPS, Post Office, DHL, and a regional parcel carrier in the Midwest named Speedy Delivery. We will return a rate, return a label, return a tracking number, and they will in turn send that to the store that has inventory, and then from there, that store can balance its inventory and ship out with the optimal shipping method. The result of that project was a 50% savings in shipping costs for that small retailer. And I say small, they're small. There's just under 40 stores, but they have 900 employees. I mean, it's not a mom and pop shop, but it in the grand scheme of a national retailer, it's still relatively small. So it was a nice project with a little complexity to really launch our vision of complete automation in the market, but also expanding the role of the transportation management system, TMS, expanding the role beyond what the market has determined the function to be. One of the big problems of our industry is that a TMS has a very defined role in someone's supply chain. You load your business rules, you load your rates. The order comes in, you apply your business rule, and then you apply the rate and make a shipment. And at that point, a label spits out, whether it's a bill of lading or whether it's a label for a small parcel shipment, and it's over. They maybe write it back to the ERP that the order shipped, and that's it. Manifest it to the carrier, or send it to the carrier, and that is all that a TMS does. We believe that a TMS has a much bigger role, and that's what SwanLeap had started to do with our first client named Rogan Shoes in Racine, Wisconsin. The job of the TMS was to make a smart decision, but then also communicate to the customers what, hey, it's coming, here's a tracking number, updates along the way, but then also give the financial data back to them so that we could actually validate the charges on the invoice. We could provide the analytics in real time, and really get them paid, properly, along in conjunction with what the plan is. And when we start to find out invoices are wrong, we can start to identify why in the operation something's happening to cause charges to be higher than normal. So that goes for both inbound and outbound. By expanding that artificial decision making capability into the purchasing decision on your inbound freight, it not only cuts costs, but it also provides a visibility of all the shipments and orders that are coming into you, when they're going to be there. And now it has widespread implications of operations getting involved, production getting involved, purchasing to start to score and validate vendor performance, and even salespeople to start to understand shipping costs for the first time. So the role of our technology truly expands within the company to provide end-to-end visibility of vendors, customers, carriers, and helps customer service do a better job. And it just is endless in what the value that it brings of information.
Mm. And I'll just jump in with a question, kind of to continue on what you've been sharing, because I think you also mentioned in terms of among the benefits of using the SwanLeap that you've estimated an annual average transportation savings for your clients of 26.7%, which is very very accurate and I mean very specific. Tell us a little bit about more about it. Firstly, how kind of you average it out, and 26.7%. I mean, that's huge. I mean, it's almost you don't need salespeople, right? It's if you put such numbers in front of any client, typically they would want that type of a saving.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd love the financial professionals that might be listening to think about it. Also, the 26.7% in a different way. If you're a $1 billion company, you're probably spending around $80 million on freight if you're a manufacturer. I mean, it's not a fair assessment, but it's really not far off either. Okay, maybe it's 70 million, maybe it's 110 million. Let's hope it's not that high, but that's common. It's very common. Depends on the industry, of course, but common. Well, and an $80 million freight spend, we're talking about cutting a little more than a quarter of that, right? So we're talking about cutting $20 million. Now, that's equivalent to maybe in many industries like $100 million purchase order that just came in on the email or just came in. Now, if $100 million PO came in to $1 billion company, I'm pretty sure that everyone in the company would hit the brakes and really service that customer's $100 million PO. And that's the equivalent of what we're talking about, is cutting, a $100 million PO to 20% profit margin. The company would make $20 million. But, oftentimes we don't get the same attention when we start talking about adding efficiency. We visited a snowmobile manufacturer up in Minnesota, and there's only a couple up there, so we can kind of guess who that might be. But we looked at just the garment division alone, and they were shipping about $30 million. And of the $30 million, the majority of the shipments were hitting minimum charges. Now, they didn't really have a mechanism for shopping freight against parcel. We know by looking at the data that we could probably have saved that company about 50% on those shipments by integrating small parcel 100-weight product with instead of the the minimum freight shipments. So that's a good example of when you start to take AI and start to consider all possible options in the market. That is how savings happen. We can't possibly decide arbitrary lines in the sand, such as anything over 300 pounds or maybe over 100 kilos is going to ship this way or that way. We don't have enough data points in our mind to possibly make that kind of business rule, yet every company in the world makes business rules that way. We met with a major pharmaceutical company who shipped just a ridiculous amount of packages, and we have been talking to them about dynamically shopping between the post office and the core carriers in the U.S. and talked about how we would decide which one needed to be refrigerated, which has dry ice maybe, so that can't go post office or whatever, and how we're going to go ahead and make the post office decision on shipment versus FedEx UPS. The difference between a post office shipment and FedEx or UPS shipment for them was probably about 60% in some shipments because post office doesn't have density billing. It doesn't have many of the different charge structures that FedEx and UPS have. The team at the evaluating our solution was concerned that we wouldn't be able to help them stay within their UPS and FedEx tier, their volume tier. And they said, well, if we shift all this volume away, we're going to be stuck in the tier. We're going to miss our volume commitments with FedEx and UPS. And I said, but why would you arbitrarily put that volume in FedEx and UPS's core when the right decision is to choose the post office? So it's not a matter of fixing the package to meet your commitment. It's a matter of fixing your commitment to meet your package. If you're shipping a lot of big packages and they're going, and they don't need some of the special services that UPS and FedEx offer, is truly going to FedEx and UPS the right decision? I mean, that's a business decision to make, but I can show the financial decision based on the service commitment you've made to your customer might be a different provider. In that case, you need to ship with the optimal provider and forego the 1 or 2% difference in your volume tier in exchange for maybe a 20 or 30% cost reduction in that package. So I know I went in the weeds a little bit there with a little technical, but that's a good example. By taking the data, artificial intelligence can make the proper recommendation every single time on how to ship a package in the most cost-effective manner, but yet still report back what the impact of that was. So that's one of my favorite things that we're doing now is looking at showing the financial impact of decisions that were made or decisions that could have been made based on an order. So we're doing this before this package ships in some cases. In other cases, we're doing it after. And I said package, but I mean freight in general, package or freight. We could show if I was going to consider this new provider, what would it have cost me and how much would I have truly saved or overspent with the same service? So service is very important in this discussion. Of course, we're not mandating or endorsing just low cost, but if we set our service standards internally and communicate those to our organization, then we can choose the optimal method of shipping something, whether it's a small parcel, a domestic freight shipment, or even an international ocean or air shipment. As long as we're communicating and we all know internally what the service requirement is, we can find the best option that meets that service standard. So that is really where the savings of SwanLeap come in. We're not here to offer rates. We're not here to offer any whiz-bang thing that's maybe outside the ordinary, other than some of the commitments that a company may have made may have not been in their best interest, and we could provide visibility to that for the first time.
Yes, but I'm just I just have to ask this again. I mean, I'm not a technical person myself, but it seems like such an obvious thing, but still so many people are not doing it. So many companies are not doing it, and also artificial intelligence is a great tool, but in reality, a lot of companies don't have proper data, don't have visibility on data. So what would be some of the key challenges and stumbling blocks that you kind of face, and why not more companies are basically implementing the type of solutions that you, SwanLeap. Let's take it SwanLeap.
Well, the biggest problem is it's not a valid problem, but it's a problem here all the time, is that IT resources are thin. We understand that IT resources are thin at every company out there in the world. But what we're talking about here fundamentally changes the industry. Changes the company's position within their respective industry. The level of service that our customers can provide to their customers is so much higher than the competition, and they have a temporary window of opportunity to excel. Buying from our new customer is better than buying from their competitor because of the communication, because of the decision, because of the way that they are able to better manage their vendors. It's all very, very important. Um, so we hear a lot of times, and probably my most frustrating comment from that we hear, an obstacle is, yeah, we're getting a new ERP next year, so we're gonna just kind of wait until that happens. I mean, that is the most short-sighted. If that isn't proof that someone truly doesn't understand the impact of what we're talking about, and maybe we failed on our side of explaining the impact. But we hear that a lot, and I find that very frustrating as an obstacle because if they truly saw the industry through our lens, I mean, we would pay for 3 or 4 new ERPs for them next year. I mean, if this was $100 million PO, the whole company would stop in $1 billion company, um, and they would take notice and service that. And we're literally offering companies in the world the same kind of returns as that. And it's not just the money returns; it's also the how they communicate and have better vendor relationships, how they have better customer relationships. So complacency is our biggest obstacle, and I don't know how to get through that sometimes, but I think our feeling is just we kind of give the opportunity, and if there's not immediate interest, maybe we can come back to the person in a year because chances are, what usually happens when we hit the complacency is when we come back in a year, the person's no longer with the company.
Yes, that is true.
And that is absolutely true. It's really funny.
Um, and let's just, I mean, I just want to go a little bit deeper also on the artificial intelligence side and on the data side and on the, I mean, do you find also that from a company's perspective, from a manufacturer perspective, retailer perspective, I mean, do they always have the data ready for you guys to plug it in and plug it in through your systems? I mean, is that also a kind of a fundamental issue that you face, that sometimes some of these guys just don't have the enough, I don't know, digital data, enough accurate data, enough information for you guys to run it through your systems in the best way, or is that's not really a problem that you face?
Well, I mean, it depends what the infrastructure is right now. I mean, um, it's safe to say that every company out there is has a system of some sort. We're probably not after the someone so small they don't have any technical infrastructure at all. So everyone has some system. The hardest system for us to integrate with would be like a homegrown system or like an AS400 system. But if someone's using one of the leading technologies out there, that's like a couple of days for us to integrate and do the file exchanges. It's not even the coding at this point; it's the testing that takes us time. Um, if someone has a technology already, and maybe they were a leader and innovator and bought the technology in 2000 or 2001 when all of our competitors seem to have been born, um, for us to unplug that solution and just plug us in is one of the sweetest things out there because we don't have to get the IT department super involved. We can typically use the same file schema, the same data matching that they're already using, and we'll just accept that, and then we'll migrate that to our database and allow the systems to talk smoothly. And in many cases, they can actually run two systems concurrently. They can kind of pilot and demo the SwanLeap system, or roll it out and train some people on the SwanLeap system within their organization for executing shipments, while maybe one location still using the old software, and so it works really well. But to us, the biggest obstacle there is homegrown systems are hard for us to integrate with because they're usually not done to the proper standards.
Mm, got it. And who would you say that are your main targeted customers? I mean, you mentioned healthcare companies, you mentioned retailers. Are there certain, I mean, criteria that you have for your ideal type of customers? And you've touched upon some, but just to kind of go a little bit deeper.
Well, that's something our marketing department wrestles with every day because if a new CFO comes into his position or a new controller, it takes them a little bit of time to get comfortable with the environment, but ultimately, somebody new in the position, they really want to make an impact, and so they really want to drive costs. They like our message; it resonates with them, and 3 to 6 months into a job, a new controller, he or she would love to get their hands on us because they know that we're going to give them a greater level of visibility and responsibility and accountability than what they probably have currently, or what they have currently for sure. So financial folks are really good for us. Sometimes IT folks are good too because maybe the system they have, crashed last year during this peak season. That happens all the time. You wouldn't believe it, Radu. Imagine shipping out 80,000, 100,000 packages with a software that someone paid $250,000 for, that resides on one single PC on the floor of a warehouse, and you start running 80,000, 100,000 packages a day through that. The thing's going to start smoking on the floor there, and then clearly they can't have any data as a result of it because you couldn't accumulate that much data for that much time on a single machine. You need to do that over many, many, many servers. So the systems like our competitors are designed to literally dump the data at the end of the transaction. So yeah, I mean it definitely varies. It's seldom the shipping people, surprisingly, that want this level of visibility. In fact, this level of visibility down to who made a shipment or who executed a shipment or who designed this, who approved this contract, that's kind of scary for some folks. That in a certain bureaucratic organization with many different divisions and locations, I mean, we still find that most structures like that, one division doesn't want to share their freight rates with a different division because they think they got good rates and they want to look better than the other division leaders. So SwanLeap truly starts to iron all that out and provide that global visibility across many countries, across many many different divisions, and give companies the data they need to run their company.
It's very interesting what you just mentioned. Actually, and it's a common problem, right? I mean, that's why typically, if you sell this type of solutions, what you mentioned in terms of going to the CFO makes the most sense, because the person will primarily care about the big picture objectives of saving cost, will not care so much about the politics involved. Whilst if you go to actually the kind of no-brainer type of users at the end of the day that would most be impacted in a positive way, there's all sorts of politics and other implications within the organization where they might actually be be obstruct literally to get in. So you need to pick your battles, don't you? And you need to go to the right person and to the right stakeholder within the organization.
One note on that. One note on that, if I might add, I mean, there's another problem that we come across, and that is really, really weak executive leadership, because the executive can look at this and go, "This makes total sense." And how much does it cost? Oh my gosh, you mean we make money from this every month? Your ROI is every month we make money on this? Yes, that's what I'm telling you. You're making money month one with our system. So he's all excited or she's all excited, and they go, "Yeah, great! I can't wait to get my shipping people involved." And I start to kind of say, "Well, don't expect the same level of excitement." And they say, "No, you don't understand our shipping people." Well, guess what happens? Let me just pass you off to Radu in shipping. He's going to be all over this. And guess what? Radu doesn't start showing up to calls anymore. And that happens all the time too, where if the executive doesn't stay involved in this and mandate this almost as this visibility, we get a lot of complacency from maybe a shipping person that he might have an MBA from one of the finest supply chain schools in the world. But when he starts to say, "Wow, this starts to kind of make our whole shipping process not so magical and not so hidden," and yeah, our purchasing manager, who's not a very nice guy, he can now see what I'm doing. Yeah, I don't know if this is a good thing for us or my career. It's not.
Yes.
Suddenly they have the recipe to my job, and we get that a lot too, and it's really sad. We still see organizations where one division books a truckload, and the trucker calls the division to cancel because a different division books that same truck at a higher rate. That actually happens, and
yes.
so we need the executives to stay involved and see this all the way through, especially like a president or CEO of a $2 to $5, $10 billion company. They can't push this on their supply chain people, even though I know it makes sense to do that and they want to. They have to stay involved to make sure that this actually gets executed, because leaving it in the hands of the people that it affects the most sometimes is dangerous.
Yes. No, and actually, it's almost all the time dangerous. Very, very few are very strong leaders and visionary leaders. They mostly also care about, safety and security and future. And will I still have my job if I do all this automation and artificial intelligence and whatnot? And I'll share with you another example of a friend of mine who runs a, without mentioning names, but he runs an IT digitalization type of a platform software as a service, but he's more on the IT side. But he never goes to the CIO. He never goes to the IT folks. He always sells to the CEO, because unless the CEO pushes it, the CIO will never push it, because the CIO's mandate and agenda will not be to give that type of visibility, that type of strength to the organization, and potentially he would have to reduce his staff, because all of a sudden he would not need so many, and he just wouldn't do it. So unless my friend's problem was that unless he got to the CEO, he knew that with the CIO he would never be able to push it through. So it's I think it's a common problem. Actually, it's a common problem that at the end of the day you need to get that executive that's ultimately responsible for the P&L and for what matters in the business ultimately, right? The P&L, and not so concerned about career and God knows what, to push it through. So interesting.
Yeah, it gets back to the complacency and fear. I mean, it really,
yes.
So yeah, our biggest competitor is complacency.
Yeah. But talk about competition. I just need to throw this at you, because I mean, in terms of, let's talk TMSs, right? Transportation management system. There's a lot of them out there, right? So, and I know that you say SwanLeap is a totally different beast and totally different type of a system, but you've got your Oracles, your SAPs, there's literally, I think there's hundreds of them. How would you say, if I am to throw you this kind of question that I'm probably you hear a lot as well, how do you stand out to all the rest of the guys out there?
Yeah, we've defined all the supply chain technologies out there. We think fit into really two buckets, and that is legacy systems and auxiliary systems. And I think everyone would agree, and we're still waiting for the people that don't agree with the idea that supply chain industry is antiquated. We believe it is, and most of the people we talk to believe it is. The legacy systems that you mentioned, they filled a very large gap when they were all created in the 80s and 90s, and really some of them in the 2000s. But what happened is they didn't evolve. They didn't advance to meet the demands of the shipper, and they cannot support going forward the way that shippers will be using the data. For example, can you imagine taking one of the world's biggest retailers, and we can figure out who any of those would be, whether it's, well, we don't need to mention any brands, but we all get an idea. Let's say they're shipping a lot. And if they want to run, what did we do this week what did we do last week, in 2018 versus the same week the year before in 2017? I would argue there's not a company in the world that can provide you that data. What they have to do is they have to go and pull a report, and they get what's called metadata. It's not shipment level detail because it's too big. And the data is so big that you can't even open that on a PC. You're talking about files that might be 500 gig of data to pull that data down, and you can't open that in Excel. So we start looking at what we're looking, that's not an unrealistic matrix that you would want. What did we ship last week versus the year before the same period? Very simple query. And the database and the data structures of those old systems do not provide that kind of visibility. Plus, they're not capturing parcel, freight, international all in one platform. So that's one side. But we can take the result of any of those systems that have table-based business rule static routing, and we can take the result and backwards run that against what it would have been if it would have been a live dynamic artificial intelligence decision, and we can show the savings. And that's our commitment to the customer. That's what we're committing. Whether you're Walmart or anybody, at that level, GE, all the way down to maybe a one location manufacturer, we believe the savings are in that. Our average is going to be in that 27% range because they don't have the visibility. They don't have the ability to make those decisions, and they don't have a way to capture that data. So with all that being said, how could any global supply chain leader possibly negotiate freight rates at this point? Our answer is they can't. They cannot. They don't have the data. They don't have the intimate carrier network knowledge to properly get the right terms and conditions in their agreements. I mean, the job of most people is to prepare one RFP, send it out, field it back, make some selections off that, and that's their supply chain plan. And we just see a much different approach to that, using big data to get the best out of every provider in the world, and do that on every single shipment. So it becomes a truly dynamic decision, and the carrier that we or whether that's domestic or international, the carrier we chose, our broker, doesn't matter, that we chose this morning might not be the optimal provider for this afternoon shipment. And that's what we see time and time again.
Yes. Mm. So basically, that you have the ability to be dynamic. You have the ability to take on, to take kind of real time and give them that real time decision making capability, which is again at the back end. If it is powered by artificial intelligence, then obviously no human being can possibly compile that amount of data as well. So that's a big plus. So yeah, interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm just wondering, because also what is mind blowing about you guys, and obviously that's why you're number one on Inc list, is that you grew, incredibly. Right? I mean, you look at the numbers, 75,000%, so basically 75 times, right? From the last 3 years, right? Your revenue grew. I mean, how did that happen? I mean, how did you? I mean, I don't know. It's just mind blowing. I mean, it's, are you that good?
Well, it's easy when you're small. That's what my friends remind me, by the way, Radu. They say, "Oh, that's nothing when you're small."
It's also true. That's also true. Yes.
Yeah. They said, if you do that next year, we'll be impressed. Well, I don't think we'll do that next year. I think we'll be more in the 35 to 40,000%, which I'm still quite proud of. But it really was. I tell you what, it was really hard and really motivates me when a company flat out says no to us, especially when they try to maybe sugarcoat it by saying, but we really think you're an amazing solution and we just don't think you can handle us. And that happened a lot. It certainly isn't happening anymore, but growing a technology from like one room to and one employee all the way up to almost 100 employees is pretty remarkable. But more remarkable is convincing the market that they should pay money in exchange for you. So I remember going to like the first big customer that I wanted to talk to. They did they were about 8 million in revenue, like 300,000 or so in shipping costs, and I was so nervous because this is like the big opportunity, and we won it. And so then I remember going to like the first $50 million revenue company, which was about a few $1,000,000 in shipping costs, and I was so nervous, and we won that. And so now we're getting calls from companies 120, 130 million dollars in freight costs. That puts us at about the $10 billion revenue range. And they're saying, hey, how fast would this take to implement? I remember I used to have some of my friends come to the office because we only had like 4 employees when we had our first prospective customers want to come to our office. And so that has been probably the most remarkable accomplishment, is getting people to trust you when you have nothing, and getting people to validate the system and have confidence that it can help them when you don't have a customer. How do you get your first reference? No one's going to buy without a reference. And that's a very difficult thing. And so now that we've done that, are we ready for the big European companies that have 100 offices worldwide? Yes, we are. And we have the platform that's going to give them the visibility they need, that the aforementioned competitors that you said, Oracle and SAP and those, they don't have that level of visibility in real time. If you want that, you have to buy the Oracle platform, and then you have to buy auxiliary technologies to work well with the legacy platform. So major companies in Latin America specifically, some of the automakers, some electronics companies, and you can imagine those big makeup companies down there, they don't want to spend the big dollars on a global transportation management system, TMS, because even if they were to implement that in in kind of that tier two market, maybe Mexico and Brazil and Chile and Argentina and things like that. If they were even going to spend the money, it wouldn't give them the tool they still need. They need to control from France what's going on in South America right now. I want to see what we did this week versus last week. Those questions can't be answered in that kind of table that's not connected live to the carriers. I want to see. We're considering our global strategy in a new freight forwarder, and I want to see what the performance has been in this region by this freight forwarder. That's not a question that can be answered by anyone in the world right now, not shipper nor technology provider. So what the major companies have done that I mentioned is they've basically gone to global 3PLs so that they at least can call somebody and someone's going to go and start to kind of put together some spreadsheets and stuff to try to make sense of this and take that off the plate of the automaker or the major airline or whoever. So they kind of have a way that they've dealt with getting that info, but that's not an easy metric to get because there isn't a technology that can house it. And so we are the only ones that I've ever seen that have that power and that flexibility and that level of innovation on not just the AI in execution of inbound or outbound, but in that real time visibility and analytics. And that's really what is accounted for our growth. We haven't been bringing on 30, 50 new customers a month. I mean, we're adding probably 5 to 8 new customers a month, major companies. And you know what? It's going well, and our onboarding has gotten to the point where our account reps can actually turn on accounts. It doesn't need much programming anymore. We've really even automated our own processes internally, and we're ready now for mass scalability. We can launch a company with 60 locations. We can do that in 60 days. And we've done it, and that was one of our major milestones that we hit. Launching a $50 million freight spend company in 18 days. Those are real, from start to finish training, integration, testing that we've done. So that's really what's been the secret of our growth is the flexibility, the fact the tool is unlike any other, and truly we are in the process of replacing our first Oracle OTM solutions. We have won against Oracle before, but a lot of that, to be fair to Oracle, was based on price. I think Oracle might have been $700,000, $800,000. We might have been about $300,000. So that was good for us to have those early wins. But now to actually unplug that and plug us in, we're making some strides in that space, and we're excited about that.
Super. I mean, it really, really, really interesting. And how do you? I mean, okay, so obviously, again, you will grow, you will continue to grow. It's still incredible numbers, but how do you plan to sustain this? I mean, how do you plan to maybe come? Do you plan to come to Asia? Do you plan to go and open in Europe? I think for now you mostly have the team in US, right?
Yeah, U.S. We're in the process of establishing in Latin America right now. I think Latin America is a wonderful market for us. I speak very good Spanish. I wouldn't say fluent; it's close, but definitely fluent Portuguese. So it's also a passion of mine, Latin America. So we're just kind of getting pulled down that way right now with some opportunities that we have. So Asia definitely has a lot more complexity, a lot more language intricacies, and different markets use terms differently even within the same language. So that's been good for us. I'm really excited about some of the possibilities in Africa. I think that Africa is really wide open as well. Eastern Europe is certainly good. Europe, I think, is a little more crowded, not from a valid solution perspective, but from a message. I think there's a lot of folks there trying to do similar things, and I think it's very difficult for a European decision maker to differentiate between all the different messages out there. I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of technology companies out there that I don't think a lot of those technology companies quite know why they're not going to be able to make it. But basically, we see a lot of the legacy guys. We don't see anybody in the legacy category, meaning you're loading your rates, you're loading your business rules. I don't see anybody surviving in the next 5 years, according to just some of the statistics we've read from Deloitte alone about the adoption of AI and the rate of AI. I mean, we're talking about within the next 5 years, more than 60% of the 60% of the companies in the world leveraging AI for their supply chains. And I don't see any company out there that actually has a good handle on what that means and how to execute that other than us.
Yes. And how do you? I mean, I just want to ask you. I forgot to ask you this question, which is slightly technical, but it's very important, and we got it from a few of our listeners, and I think it's important also for the clients, of course. The confidentiality and basically data confidentiality, and how do you basically protect that for your clients? Because I think you, if I read correctly, you quoted that you represent your capabilities honestly, you protect confidentiality, you do not misrepresent, and you only make promises that we can keep. But I think data confidentiality is a big concern for most people, and I just wanted to get your thoughts also on that, on how you do it currently.
Well, one thing that I think is a little frustrating for me internally is um, people come to us like a major carrier, major freight forwarder, and go, how much do you guys spend in this part of the world, or do you spend in this part of the country? And I can't give that answer. I was asked by a major carrier, how many transactions did you guys do year to date? I don't have that answer, Radu. I cannot get that answer because we set up every single client um, as its own database instance. So we have siloed all of our clients from one another. So we don't have the ability to share. We have found the market doesn't want to share their providers. They're fearful if they do that. If they share their providers, then they're afraid they're not going to have them available to them. So yeah, data confidentiality is huge, and in some of the healthcare laws, as even with HIPAA, I think has caused a lot of big pharma to be overly cautious to the point of being a little bit, I think, cross the line. For example, they don't want us to store address level detail in a system that they're trying to make labels from. I don't know how. It seems quite odd. Sometimes just the level of concern that some have for confidentiality. Um, we're still told by many of those companies that they can't be in the cloud because it's not secure. While the CIA and the NSA are in the cloud in the United States. The top security in intelligence offices in the world are have belief in the cloud, and so I think that's still maybe a little bit of a generational change that we'll kind of continue to work through. Um, but certainly, this data can't be processed anywhere else on premise. So like anything, when we hear the cloud's not secure, we can't use it. I just know if we call that company back in a month, that guy's probably not going to be, or that woman's not going to be working there anymore. So it's okay.
same
And
same
that's the truth.
principle as
That is
yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
the truth.
Same principle as the shipping person that wouldn't use or is too busy not to use, I guess. Um, and yeah, it is true. It is true. I mean, I don't know if it takes a month. I mean, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, unfortunately, for the companies. Typically, it's unfortunate because they would have saved money, or they would have been faster at adapting if they had gotten rid of that person faster. But sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to figure out where's the bottleneck. The larger they get, typically the more difficult it is to identify those people that maybe are a little bit blocking the progress. But such is life, right? And I wanted also to kind of move on and coming to the last couple of questions, to move on to what we do a lot in terms of people and hiring and getting the right type of people on board, and especially in the fast type of environment and fast growing type of environment that you are in. What are some of the qualities and some of the attributes that you're looking for when you're hiring your leaders and your staff, really? That's SwanLeap.
Yeah, it's a difficult measure. I've gotten a little bit removed from the hiring lately. I'd like to get more involved in it. It's difficult. We've had a lot of people that have called us that want to come work for us. And as appealing as it is to get a list of customers from our competitors or whatever, that's a big flag for me that if someone's willing to sell out their own current employee to come work for us, I mean, what do we think they're gonna do to us, right? So that's been challenging because I want to believe that a salesman or a operations person from one of our competitors would be a great fit here with a better tool. But then again, that comes with challenges. I don't know if they have a workforce. Do not compete. We could be getting into a whole ball of wax if we start calling on some of our competitors' customers off one of their proprietary lists. So It's been challenging because it's tempting. It's tempting to get these good professionals that are having success with a lesser product, but we've stuck to our guns and really tried to hire people from outside the industry and brought them up to speed. Just good at people with good integrity. I think that is sometimes a works against us because a lot of our staff didn't do 25 years at a major carrier. But you know what? When we start peeling back the layers of the onion, if you did 25 years at a major carrier, how much innovation have you experienced? What's your vision of the market? You probably have a very small view of the industry based on the training and the playbook that provider gave you. So it's challenging. It's super challenging. We just want good integrity people with a lot of energy that want to be part of something cool. That have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, a little bit for authority, from the perspective of not taking the status quo as gospel. In our industry. So when some of the research firms put out the list of the top technologies, let's ask the question why, right? We refuse to play nicely with them at this point. I don't want them telling our story. I don't want them saying, "Yeah, but SwanLeap goes after this size account." I don't want that. I'm not interested in receiving any coverage from any research companies. We're doing just fine, telling our message on trade show stages, and that shows and in our marketing. And you know what? We're having a lot of fun doing it with good people. So
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, and it's great to be on really good podcasts like ourselves as well. So that's better.
uh,
I have my reservations also about all this. Again, not to name, but there's one particular one that's fairly large that, yeah, research, whatever. So okay, so not going into that, but um, what would you say that in terms of in terms of this pace of growth that you have, and again, I think it's if we had to talk from people's perspective, let's just strictly relate to the people's perspective. What's your major challenge, right? I mean, how do you keep up with this pace of growth? How does your team keep up with your pace of growth? And what's, I mean, I guess what's the biggest challenge in keeping up with this growth?
I mean, we built the system to scale from the first customer, so it's not a system issue. In fact, we're seeing where we're having some things we need to make faster. I mean, we're constantly working on the system. Um, I mean, our biggest challenge is probably the human capital perspective. I mean, how do we launch into Canada? How do we launch into these markets? Um, you know, the we have about 80 employees worldwide right now. How do we make that 200 employees? Um, and actually pay, just entering a country takes like 5 attorneys. I mean, you have to have you have to have a trademark attorney, a corporate attorney, a tax attorney, an employment attorney. I mean, so just talking to all the attorneys is a full-time job, right? We don't have a person to do that. I think that person starts in January. We're hiring a global attorney to work to talk to the other global attorneys. So um, there's a lot of challenges in scaling this fast, and I'm thankful for Jason Swanson, our CTO. We don't have the typical um, types of tension and wedges that partners have and business partners have. I mean, we have a wonderful. We took on investment capital from two people in Madison that are more. It's more family money, and it's not a significant amount in the eyes of global venture capital, but it's a lot of money to a family for sure. And they've been great. They've been great advocates and support throughout. As we go through new challenges every day. So just talking to our be able to talk candidly with your partner and have nothing be off limits and really getting to the root of it has been really good for us. But those are the keys I think for us to keep going is continue to seek good people, not necessarily good credentials. And I just turned one down today. I really like the story. I think he could help grow our business. I didn't like some of the things about the person and their energy level, and I don't know if I was in the heat of a battle and I looked next to me if he'd be next to me or not. I don't know. I need to know for sure because we are in a battle. We're in a global battle right now with very 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 big companies that have every interest in the world to try to discredit us or knock us down or whatever. because we are coming up to take over, and so we need to know that the people around us, that, if I have if I hire a new person, that I look next to me in the middle of a dogfight and they're going to be there. So uh, exciting for the new crop of people that we have, and how we've been able to evangelize the message, and really convey the vision. Um, and definitely new challenges, but it's definitely rewarding.
Yes, yes. And just to kind of add on terms of the in terms of the lawyers and stuff. So in Singapore, it takes half an hour to register a company. In Estonia, I think they have a. I mean, as you know, there's a couple of pockets of this type of countries which are just incredible for you guys, especially for you're on a fast track to expand. So there's a few very few actually, unfortunately. I mean, I think hopefully more. But there's a few places in this world where it's really kind of straightforward to set it up and get it up and running. So just putting it out there.
Well, South America is tough. There's quite a bureaucracy, and
Oh yeah,
so we're
yeah,
experiencing that. And we're currently beta testing some programmers in some other Latin American countries as well. And really, what it's important for us to make sure that we're embracing global diversity, not just in um, uh, different nationalities, but in different, in all the different genders, sexuality. I mean, everything. Diversity is a very important aspect to us of building a well-rounded company that is going to be able to listen to new ideas, and truly think differently, in different regions and different parts of the industry. And that's been very fun for us and rewarding to create that kind of environment that all voices are heard.
Hmm. And looking back at the story, final question from me. Looking back at the SwanLeap story so far, you've come a long way. What would you say that are some of the things that make you most proud?
I think I'm really proud of the way that Jason Swanson, our CTO, and I have been able to weather any storm. And certainly there's been, like any business, there's been, ups and downs, of course. I'm proud that we've been able to finally get the message at a platform where Target Corporation likes the message and says, "Yeah, you're absolutely on point." That's really validating for me that we had the idea. A lot of people ask me, "Did you guys ever imagine this kind of success?" Yes, we absolutely did. We built this business because we saw the opportunity, and the opportunity still exists. We don't believe that anybody will come and compete with us from inside this industry. We think that the major competitors that we're going to have in the future are going to come from outside the industry, because we think that if you're already in this space, you're a little bit contaminated in your mind about how things are supposed to work. And I think that some of the fresh ideas coming out of um, some of the major tech centers in the world, I think they're good ideas. It's just that the people don't really understand supply chain and global supply chain, and they don't understand carrier networks. They don't understand shippers. They don't understand planning departments. They don't understand corporate IT bureaucracy for project attention. But somebody will, and I know that we need to stay sharp, and we need to be good. We need, as good as we think we are, we need to be better. And at the end of the day, I'm proud of our ability to not be satisfied with the success we've had, but push harder and faster, and provide the opportunity for our employees.
Super. Well, look, Brad, it's been inspiring. It's been very exciting to hear all the different stories, case studies, sharings, war experiences that you've gone through so far, and I'm sure that moving ahead you will have even more. Like we discussed before the podcast, I think the challenge will never stop, the journey will never stop. It's just an ongoing type of transformation where you face different types of problems, but the problems will continue to come. But as long as you keep going, I think SwanLeap seems to be on an excellent trajectory. So I personally wish you guys lots of success, and hopefully when we catch up again, you will have kept up the pace, and next year you'll still be number one on Inc.'s list.
Well, I'm quite certain after visiting the Inc. and meeting all those brilliant entrepreneurs, quite certain we won't be number one next year on the Inc. list, but I'm hoping for top 10. I think we got a good chance of passing the top 10 mark. I mean, we're in good economic times at the moment, and I'm guessing that there's been some wonderful other success stories being written as we speak. So it is a truly big honor to just be included in that list of just brilliant minds. So.
Super. Well, great to have you, Brad. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the time, and we stay in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to follow us on radopalamario.com/podcast for all the show notes, links, and extra tips covered in the interview. Make sure also to subscribe to our emailing list to get the news in the nick of time. If you're listening through a streaming platform like iTunes or Stitcher and you like what we do, please kindly review and give us 5 stars so we can keep the energy flowing and get more people to find out about our podcast. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do feel free to follow me to stay tuned for our latest articles as well as future guests for the podcast. And if you have any suggestions or any other idea, please feel free to write to me. I respond to all. And also, please make sure not to miss our next episode, where we will be having a few other C-level and top leaders in supply chain joining us. Stay tuned.